Okay, so this is something we've talked about before, but we've actually got now a calculation to find if an outlier exists. So an outlier is just a score that is different, significantly different from the other. So an outlier significantly different from the other sets, from the other data, from the rest. Okay, and the calculation that is in the books is that if a score is less than, so Q1 is the bottom quartile, and you subtract 1.5 times the IQR, and that'll give us a number, and then we look for anything that's less than that data. And we can have an outlier at the top end if we've got more than the top quartile and adding 1.5 times IQR. So we'll do an example in a sec, but when we're calculating Q1 and Q3, and obviously you have to get Q2 as well, we have to use all the data. So we have to use all the data to calculate. So even though we think there's an outlier, we don't just dismiss it straight away. Okay, so copy that and come across when you're ready. Okay, so here's some steps to follow. So I've got a small number of data. So make sure the data is arranged in order of size. Now, Q1 and Q3 is what we have to find, but we've got to get Q2 first to get Q1 and Q3. Then you calculate the IQR, which is just Q3 minus Q1. And then whatever that number is, we're going to multiply by 1.5 and subtract it from Q1 or add it to Q3. And that'll give us two more numbers. And then if there's any number that's outside those numbers, then we have an outlier. Okay, so here's what we do. First of all, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to be Q2, okay, it's the middle score. Then we look backwards, and that's Q1, and we look forward, and that's Q3. So we've calculated them, and then we multiply, calculate the IQR, so 13 minus 5 equals 8. So that's the IQR. Now, we're going to do 1.5, so 8 times 1.5 on your calculator is 12. So Q1 minus 12 equals 5 minus 12 equals negative 7. And there's no numbers less than negative 7. So there's nothing on the left-hand side, and we'll just check on the top side. So Q3 plus 12 equals 13 plus 12. So 25. Even though it looks like it's way out of step, it's still okay. That means that we can use all the numbers in representing the data. So we've got, so you'd have, if you're doing a box and whiskers, okay, you're going to do it more accurately than me. But, you know, I'm not doing it to scale. I'm just doing this in a bit of a hurry. 10, 13. So we've got the box at 5, 10, 13. And the whisker going down and the whisker going up. So even though 25 looks like it's a long way away, this is not an outlier. It just scraped in, okay? Now, if it didn't scrape in, I'm hoping that my next example will be an outlier, but say for instance, if that number, say that number had been 26 and we were just out, then what we would do is instead of having so I'm just pretending that the number was 26, okay? So 26 could be an outlier, and the top score is 13, which is also, so that means that there's no whisker in this particular case. So the whisker and the top of the box are the same thing, and then the outlier is 26. Now, in this particular case, it wasn't, but if 26 was the data, then we would just put a cross at the top, okay? Just undo that. We would just leave it as a cross. So let's hope in my next example I do have an outlier, but otherwise there was no outliers in that data set. Let's come across when you're ready. Okay, so I'm hoping this time we do have an outlier, but anyway, let's do it together instead of working by yourself. So we've got 1, 2, pen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got two middles. So Q2 equals 12. We don't need Q2 except when we're drawing the diagram. So we're going backwards. We've got 4. So Q1 equals 8, the middle there. And going forwards, Q3 equals 14. So the IQR equals 14 minus 8 equals 6. 1.5 times 6 equals 9. I know that by my calculator in my head. So Q1 minus 9 equals 8 minus 9 equals minus 1, and that's okay. Q3 plus 9 equals 14 plus 9 equals 23. So we do have an outlier. Okay, so that is an outlier. So then on our diagram, box and whiskers. I'm not drawing it to scale. I'm just trying to get through just quickly. 8, 12, 14, and 15. And then way up here is 24. So the lowest score is 3. We've got a box 8, box at 12, box at 14. The lowest score is 3. The highest score is now 15, not 24. So that's our thing. And then 24, we just put a cross out there as an outlier. Okay? So there's your representation using outliers. So hopefully that makes sense. And we'll see if we can find some exercises in worksheets to do. Okay, bye.